Many years ago, long before YouTube, I was on one of the old file sharing websites looking for documentaries, crime documentaries. It wasn't easy to find that stuff back then, and if you found something good that wasn't at the video store, it was like striking gold. And a title that caught my eye as I'm scrolling through was something like Mystery off of Interstate 70. And I grew up off of Interstate 70, so I thought, oh, that sounds interesting. It's a highway that I know really well, and it's a highway that has stretches that are long and lonesome, and you have to work to keep morale up. So I thought, all right, I'll download that one. Good enough for me. And I downloaded it, and this is back when it took 2 weeks to download something like this. So I remember checking the progress. It would go up each day. 4% in the last 18 hours. Nice. The internet must be really cooking today. But it paid off. It was a great film, so well made. I loved the story. I probably watched it 40 times. I'd put it on before bed. It became that movie for me. And it was put together in my opinion, the only way that a story like this should be told, which is you get the relevant characters of the story and you sit them down and do sit-down interviews, whether it's in their house, in their back garden, wherever, a nice sit-down interview where they can get into it and tell the story, and then you edit that chunk of footage with a walk-around interview. Get them walking around their property or the relevant parts in the town. Doesn't matter. Get them walking around, and then you have those two chunks of footage, and you edit that with really great B-roll. The sun coming up and going down. Traffic sped up, so it's going fast. Relevant spots in the town for the story, and you edit those 3 chunks of footage together, and you don't need amateur hour actors to reenact the thing. Come on, everybody, let's go. Hurry. And that's how this movie was put together. They had really good interviews with the relevant characters, the more the better, as you can imagine. And I just loved it. And when you download something like that, you think, I'm always going to have it. I downloaded it. But time moved on as it does, and I moved out of my parents' house, and that computer was replaced by a smaller, newer computer. And then that computer was replaced by a smaller, newer computer. And so on. And then all of a sudden, I'm back years later being like, I'd like to watch that old documentary. Where is it? And I'm looking through hard drives and old computers, and I can't find it. And then this is where it gets weird. I start searching for it, and not only can I find nothing about the film, but I can't find anything on the internet about the case that the film talks about. Nothing looked for years. But I watched it over and over, and I know the story inside and out. So tonight, from the deepest, darkest shelves of the archives, I bring to you the lost story. There's a lot of towns off of Interstate 70 where the town's best days are long behind it. Either an industry went a different direction, or a plant closed, or everybody got addicted to meth, or some awful combination. One can lead to the other. And in less than a generation, a town can go from a bright blue sky, green grass, birds chirping, filled with hope and opportunity. Good morning, ma'am. Amazing place to live. To a dingy, seedy, gross, dirty snow piles that never seem to melt. Why don't they ever melt? Hopeless, no opportunity, nothing to do but drugs and get old and die town. And that's what happened to the town that this story takes place in. And when times were good, happy days and sunshine, 90% of the households in the town had at least one person. Some households, it was both people. At least one person worked at this giant company that was in town. And the town was in a valley, and built up into the hillside was the grounds for this huge company. And they manufactured parts that went into some machine that did something. It wasn't too exciting, but it was a real deal huge company with a factory and a corporate office building for sales and marketing, and you name it, a plant. And this giant grounds built up into the hillside. And when you think of an owner of a real deal company, factory, corporate, the whole thing, it's hard not to picture a beady-eyed, vicious capitalist pig in a top floor office getting a boner, fantasizing about exploiting the common man. But in this situation, it actually wasn't that. The owner of this company was a decent, respected man, big barrel-chested man, always smiling, and the general consensus of the people that worked there in that era was, you gotta do something for work to support your family, and since I gotta do something, this isn't half bad. The pay is good, the time off is good, the benefits were amazing, and they even said if you had a financial disaster and you just blew it, you could go into the big boss man's office and tell him, and normally he would cut a check right there, soothe the stress. Everybody that worked there got along. It was a community. There was a big grass area on the grounds of the company, and everyone would come on the weekends and have barbecues, and everybody's kids was friends, and it was a good place to work, and people had stability and happiness, and it was a good time. The owner of the company lived up the road, up the hill. Pretty much everybody lived in the town, but the owner lived up the hill 30 minutes on a huge property. You can imagine, richest guy in town, huge property, huge mansion, the whole thing. And he lived up there 30 minutes up Rich Guy Road with his wife and his little son, Alan. And Alan struggled socially. You could say he failed socially. And not only was he isolated by the 30-minute trip up Rich Guy Road, but also he had an awful personality, which isolated him. And so when Alan was really young, they would throw these huge birthday parties with spare no expense, trapeze artist, musician, balloon guy, a magician. And when Alan was young, they would invite, all of the kids his age, and when the kids were young and it was more of the parents' decision whether they went to the birthday party, they would have these big parties and the kids would be there. They wouldn't really play with Alan. It wouldn't go great, but it would go off. But as the kids his age got older and it became more of their decision whether they went to Alan's birthday, hey kids, we got Alan's invitation to his birthday. You guys want to go? No way. Alan sucks. And they didn't like him. And so the guy that owned the big company and his wife are thinking, we got to get play dates for Alan. He can't just sit up here on the property. And so they started to bring him downtown, or they tried to bring him into town, let him play with the neighborhood kids. But the neighborhood kids are used to hanging out every day together and surviving and contending in that world. And so they would end up being mean to Alan and ditching him. And all of a sudden, Alan would be with one of the other moms, and the other mom is calling the owner of the company, the dad, or Alan's mom, going, you gotta come pick up Alan, he's crying. And then Alan grew up a little bit and filled out to a pretty good looking, athletic, he was okay at sports young man. So you're thinking, all right, his personality's a little bit of a dud, but he's a good looking kid. He can play sports. That's not the worst hand in the world. People are dealt much worse hands than that. But his personality would shoot him in the foot every time. Whenever he was on a new sports team or a new school year, or a group of kids that didn't know he was awful would say, hey, Alan, we're going to go to the burger joint. We're going to go to the Pizza Hut, whatever it was. Come along. And they would go, Alan would go, and they'd all be around a table, hanging out, talking, and someone would say something, and then someone would riff off of what that person said, and then it would become time for Alan to talk, and whatever he would say would be so gross or out there or go on, or whatever The reason, it would leave everyone looking at each other and going, oh my God, yikes. Who invited Alan? Seriously, is that you? All right, well, we're never hanging out with Alan again. And so on. And then as Alan got a little bit older, he realized that he became aware, like people do, of his social awkwardness. And so he tried to combat when he was aware of it with getting hammered drunk. That was a phase. And so he'd get hammered drunk. All of a sudden, he'd be out on the dance floor doing a funny dance, feeling no fear, feeling no pain. Everybody's cheering and laughing at him. Hey, it's not what it was. But like most people that try to combat social awkwardness by getting hammered drunk, he quickly realized that phase of the night where he was feeling no pain out on the dance floor having fun only lasted for 20 minutes, and then he would be the sloppy guy leaning up against the wall in the back of the bar, and the only social interaction he would get at that point is when someone would ask him, Alan, are you all right? Do you need a cab? Are you going to throw up? And so Alan stopped drinking completely, and the next phase that he got into was working out. He would go and he got himself all big and strong and pumped up with big muscles. It didn't help. Everybody still hated him. At this point, he's spending more and more time at the company. His dad owns it. He knows he's probably going to take it over someday. He's not doing anything official at that point, but he's going there more and more. And Alan realizes that people are nice to him when he's there, and he doesn't bother him that, yeah, he's the big boss's son, and that in any time in a corporate environment, there's a professional niceness that comes. But it insulated Alan a little bit from the other world, which people always pretty much just got away from him as quickly as they could. And just like every other chapter in Alan's life, everybody at the company hated him, and they called him Little Evil Alan, and everybody had a mean impression of him behind his back. And at some point, he went off quickly to college and was right back officially working at the company. Again, it was staggering. His old man had all of these great qualities, and Alan had none of them. He was a liar. He was petty. He was backstabbing. He was spoiled. And one of the things one of the policies was everybody gets hired, at least for a probationary period. It doesn't matter. You're a felon, dumb as rocks, ugly as sin, whatever reason other places weren't hiring you, this place would give you a chance. There was enough moving parts in the company that you're not going to get head of sales or something, but you could get graveyard shift toilet scrubber, or there was enough things that needed to be clean and checked that everybody got a job. So that was really nice for the town. It gave everybody a nice stability. And as Alan takes more and more control and more responsibility, his old man, as people do, got older and older and would come in to the company less and less. And eventually the old man was diagnosed with dementia, and as the old man's mind disappeared into dust, the big company built above the town into the hillside went from a beacon of hope and stability to a symbol of dread and a reminder of how far the town had gone. And this story starts, in a way, with Alan in his top floor office, sitting behind a big, shiny wood desk, smoking a humongous cigar, laughing. And they said Alan liked to do the whole big cigar, put on a show with his flashiest suit and laughing any time that he was about to do a job interview, and he'd carry it through during the job interview. And the reason that the people that worked there and knew him said that Alan put on the big show with the job interviews is because the policy still stood from when his old man ran it, that everybody got hired. It didn't matter. There was a probationary period. Most people made it out of it, and that was still there. But Alan, he liked to show how important he was and what a big shot he was and how smart he was for running this massive company. He took it over, and I don't think the profits went through the roof, but it stayed definitely steady, and he needed to show the dominance and how cool and how much of a big shot he was, because everybody got hired. So he didn't have power over them with, am I going to give you the job or not? Dance for me, job applicant. So everyone knew they were going to get hired, and it was more of a formality. So he needed to do something to show everyone, listen, I'm Alan, I smoke cigars, I cruise around in little sports cars, I have a giant sign that reserves my parking spot, I am Alan. Very important. And the man that Alan is about ready to interview for a job, when he gets done with the cigar and the laughing, is sitting out in a little waiting area, waiting to be told to go in, and his name is Kurt. And the reason Kurt is interviewing at the big company after 37 years of living in the town, he was born and raised in the town. He, as a kid, would ride his bike past the big company. As an adult, he's driven past it, he's looked at it a bazillion times, and he always thought to himself, that's not for me, I'm more of a work with my hands guy. He never pictured himself working at the company. But here he is sitting in the little chair. He's a big guy, and he's wearing interview type business formal clothes that him and his wife bought 2 days before at a department store just for the interview. So he said that it still had creases right there, and he's sitting in the little chair waiting to be called to go in. And the reason that Kurt is now getting a job at the company is because him and his wife have a 2-year-old daughter, and the 2-year-old daughter has an inner ear thing that it's not that serious, but they needed regular doctor's visits and eardrops or something. Well, they didn't have health insurance. And because before Kurt gets a job at the big company, the way that he made money and supported himself and his family was 2 things. One, he would buy giant tree stumps of desirable wood, get them back to his workshop, take a giant chainsaw, cut a slab of the tree stump, sand it, stain it over and over again till it's a really nice looking, shiny, high-end table for a nice house or a lobby of a hotel, or you name it. They were really good looking tables. And they did his walk-around interview at his workshop. So he's walking around, and you got to imagine he's been on his own schedule, working with the big tree stumps, playing with the chainsaws under the bright sun. And all of a sudden now he's going, oh my gosh, I'm going to work at this place in a cubicle. But his walk around interview, they were walking around his workshop, and he's telling the camera guy and the guy interviewing, come on, I want to show you guys this. You guys will like it. And he's walking towards this giant tree stump that's probably as big as a car. And as he's walking towards it, in my head I'm thinking, oh, is he going to lean up against that for a well-deserved break in the shade? And he gets to it, and he picks the whole thing up like over his head and sets it to the side. Like he's a real strong lumberjack dude, and he doesn't think anything of it. No, come here, I want to show you guys this. You guys will like it. And so he's got his his table business out of the tree stumps that he makes and sells. But as you can imagine, there's few times of the year when people aren't really buying tables. It wasn't the most consistent. His wife was always stressed. Do you have any table orders? And he had another way that he would make money, and that was an old friend that worked for the city threw him a bone knowing he was struggling. And that was, the city divided up the whole town into sections and then contracted those sections for snow removal. So when it snowed a bunch, if you had a contract, and they were good, well-paying contracts. So if you had a contract, it was your job, if it snowed, to keep that road clear with salt and plowing and you name it. And Kurt had a big black truck that he used for his table business. lifted giant tires, all the bumpers and lighting rigs and roll bars and pretty much anything cool that you can add to a truck, Kurt added to it. And he just loved it, but the way he justified getting every single thing money could buy, even though they didn't really have any money, is because he was like, I got my little snow business. I gotta have my plow truck. And so when it would snow, and he had been doing it for years, he would get his big plow, hook it to the front of his truck, head out into the night, and get his section cleared. His wife was over it, even though it paid pretty well. It was just getting old every time there was a snowstorm. Kurt got in his big blue jumpsuit and black boots and headed out into the night, leaving the mom and the 2-year-old at home. But Kurt loved it. Also, Kurt's truck, Kurt thought it sounded great, but he said most people in the town probably would describe it as borderline annoyingly loud. And so he would zoom around in his truck. People would roll their eyes, but he loved it. But the inner ear thing with the daughter, all of a sudden, they're thinking, what are we going to do? Kurt and his wife have many nights talking in the kitchen late at night, like, what are we going to do? She's got to have these drops. And eventually Kurt said, you know what? I'm tired of worrying about this. I'm just going to go and get a job at the company. They hire everybody. Kurt's a felon. I'll tell you about that. They'll hire me even though I'm a felon. I'll get a job. We'll get benefits. I'm tired of worrying about this. And if I'm honest with myself, I can probably work there and still complete all of my table orders. They're not as many as I would hope, as you know. And so Kurt finds himself after a full life of thinking, I'm just the type of guy that works at my workshop with big tree stumps and chainsaws and stuff like that, is sitting in business formal clothes, waiting for Alan to get ready with his cigar on the other side of the door to call him in. Kurt noticed, he said in his interview, he couldn't help but notice, he looked down and he said the last time he was wearing dress pants from the time when he was sitting there waiting for the interview was his court date when he was sentenced to 8 years in prison. And the story behind that probably starts with his dad. And Kurt's father was a big, brooding, nasty son of a bitch. And Kurt's father was in the military and did some boxing in the military. And they said he was actually pretty good. He was huge and athletic and vicious, but he was a miserable drunk. He would drink all day. So if someone was also big and athletic and didn't drink all day, they would beat him. And eventually Kurt's father got kicked out of the military for being an alcoholic, came back to the town, and they said he never worked again. And he would abuse Kurt and his mom to a level that it's hard to even think about. Kurt says one of his earliest memories, he's 3 or 4, and he was playing on the floor in their house with trucks, and off of the kitchen, there was a door by the kitchen, and outside of that door, there was a little walkway and then a disconnected garage. And Kurt's father made that his drinking garage. And Kurt said the only light in the drinking garage was one sad, bleak light bulb hanging down that you would turn on and off by pulling the string. You would think if you spent all your time out there, you might put a nice homey lamp in the corner or something. Just one light bulb hanging, and he had a couch in there under the light bulb, and he would sit in there drinking cocktail after cocktail, getting madder and madder, and he would stomp around, slamming doors, muttering bitterly, and it was only a matter of time before he turned on Kurt and his poor mother. And the story that he told was he's playing with trucks on the floor, and the mom was vacuuming, and so it's the high-pitched thrum of the vacuum. And it must have set the dad off, because all of a sudden the door in the kitchen explodes open, and he said the dad walked in and just with one punch knocked the mom out cold, and now the vacuum's on its side. And the dad grabbed the vacuum cord and ripped it out of the wall. It shot halfway across the room, and then he walked straight back out, slammed the door, and went back out to the garage. So Kurt said one of his earliest memories is sitting next to his unconscious mother. He was just kind of whimpering and waiting for her to regain consciousness. And in that same era, Kurt's father would get into his head, I'm going to be a coach, I'm going to be a dad, I'm going to do it. And he would pour himself a fresh cocktail, and he would bring little 4-year-old Kurt out into the garage, and he'd click on the light, and he'd take a big slurp of cocktail. All right, kid, you're going to throw jabs and 1-2s into my hand. So he would sit there, and he'd take big slurps of his cocktail, and little 4-year-old Kurt would be punching his dad's big drunk hand, and he'd go, all right, kid, move your head, come on, keep going, big slurp of cocktail. And then eventually, it didn't matter, Kurt said, something would set him off, and he would slap Kurt across the face. He'd go, I said move your head. Listen to me, kid, you have to listen. You don't listen to me. Big slurp of cocktail. Jesus, are you crying? God. Pussy. Jesus, big slurp of cocktail. Well, dry your eyes, pussy boy, because we're going to stay at it all night until you learn how to listen and not be a fucking pussy. And little Kurt, hands shaking under the light as it got later and later, and his father got drunker and drunker until eventually the father would snap and fully attack his son. And 2 years later, right when Kurt was about ready to start kindergarten, his dad slid the couch in the garage up against the wall, pulled the car into the garage, closed the garage door, and sat in the driver's seat with the car running and killed himself. They found him slumped over with a spilled cocktail in the passenger seat. And then Kurt started school. I just have this picture in my mind of Kurt showing up on the first day of school, and his classmate is showing up right next to him with 2 loving parents wearing Argyle sweaters and khaki pants and telling the kid, okay, have such a great first day of school. We love you so much. The picture we took of your first day of school outfit looks so good and precious, and we just couldn't love you more. We will be here right when school ends. You have nothing to worry about in the world. Have a good first day. And then over here, Kurt, his dad had just killed himself in the garage. He had viciously beat Kurt and beat a truly deranged temper into poor little Kurt. And any off switch that a normal person has, he also beat it out of his son. And at that point, Kurt's mother couldn't come either, because at that point she was so spectacularly obese she couldn't leave the house and would just sit inside wearing a muumuu. And as you can imagine, Kurt had a horrible time in school. He didn't have control of his emotions. He would start screaming. He would start crying. He would punch one of his students, and then the teacher would go, hey, and then he would swing a punch at the teacher. And it's like, whoa. And after fighting his psychotic, drunk, brooding father for years, fighting a scrawny kid his own size and weight was nothing for Kurt. I picture in The Matrix when Neo realizes he's actually is the one and is fighting the agent, and just with one hand, it's the easiest thing in the world. That's how I picture once Kurt was finally, say the school bully picks on him. It's like, are you serious? And when little sports started and all of them are running out there, and they're barely playing, at that point, at that age, every kid wants to be a pro sports player. I want to play basketball. I want to play pro basketball. But the dads that were watching the little kids play would see Kurt do something and go, huh. I mean, all of the kids want to be the next, pro baseball player. But Kurt, that one, he does some things athletically. He has the size. Maybe he could be the one. But his he didn't have control over his emotions, and the referee would blow the whistle or they'd ring the bell for the end of the period or the end of the game, and Kurt wouldn't stop, and he'd punch somebody, and then the referee would come out, and then dads would be out there going, whose kid is this? And it got to a point he was so hard to handle and so hyperactive, and no one wanted Kurt to come around. The other adults would go, oh God, Kurt's here. And as Kurt got older, anybody that reminded him of his father, he would make sure he got into a fight with. And then he got to a point where he realized, I am the brooding, drunk, short-tempered, quick fuse, get in fights all the time, nasty man that my dad was. And Kurt said that hit him like a wave of depression that he didn't know if he could make it out of, and it drove him further down into an unhealthy lifestyle. When it got to the point where his peers were actually playing competitive sports and kids his age were hitting the winning home run or sinking the game-winning basket, things Kurt probably would have done if he would have had a normal upbringing. Kurt was already dropped out of school, doing drugs in a trailer across the railroad tracks with sketchy 30-year-olds. And it kept building and building, and it all came to a head for Kurt in the middle of an intersection during a road rage type incident where he caved a guy's skull in, where he was charged and had to do 8 years in prison. Luckily, they uncaved the guy's skull and he was okay. And so in doing his 8 years in prison, Kurt grew up and matured a little bit, he said, and realized he was using violence as a drug, and he got out and he wanted no part of it, and he met a good woman, which he said probably saved him, and they had this beautiful daughter, and the beautiful daughter has an inner ear thing, and they need the benefits. So here, after all of that, Kurt is sitting outside of Alan's office, and that's when the secretary says, okay, Kurt, Alan will see you now. And Kurt stands up and opens the door of Alan's office, filling almost the whole doorway. He's a big dude, top to bottom, side to side. Could say he was the shape of a doorway, and filling almost the whole thing, eclipsing the doorway as he goes in. And Alan does the big show of I'm so important, and Kurt gets a job. Not a great job. It was cleaning something. He was on a janitorial staff, but he got the benefits. Now, I have to explain, Alan, like I said, it's very important to Alan to be looked at as this rich guy. Being the rich guy that runs this company became his entire self-worth, which actually only made him more insufferable to be around. He would brag constantly. If someone showed him something like, hey, look, this is mine, I'm really proud of it, I got it, he would go, oh, I've had 2 of those for years. When I was a kid, I had that. I could buy that right now. And you're sitting there going, oh, well, I like it. But it was really important to him to be looked at as this hot-shot business guy. He would go on a bunch of first dates until they realized, I can't be around this guy, even with the family fortune. I can't hang out with Alan. But he would zoom around in his sports cars on first and second dates, going to steakhouses, and he really liked the image. But Alan was a lazy guy. He was not a dummy, but he was lazy, and he would get bored really quickly doing a lot of the necessary stuff needed to actually run the company. So what he did is he had a core team of around 5 to 10 people that actually did everything, while he sat behind his shiny wood desk smoking a giant cigar, laughing. Down the hall in cluttered, stressed out offices, the real group of people were making sure the whole thing kept going so Alan could be a hotshot. And one of those people, the story how they ended up being in the core team that ran the company in their late 20s or early 30s, it's a good story. And her name is Jennifer. And Jennifer is beautiful, and leading lady beautiful, a total bombshell. The type of woman that in a movie when they introduce her character and she comes into focus, they play this music. Bum, ba, just an absolute knockout. And she had always been, I wish I remembered her last name, even her name was Jennifer something. Just that name where everybody that went to school with her thought, how is she so hot? It just doesn't seem real. And whenever anyone talked about her, it just would bring up thoughts of summer days at the pool and red lipstick and sunglasses and beauty. And she really was a gorgeous woman. And how she ended up running pretty much the company in her late 20s is she actually got pregnant around young, 17, 18 years old, and had a few really tough years because, one, she was young with a kid, and the man that she had the kid with was a loser, and they weren't getting along, and it was horrible, and it took her a couple years to get away from that guy. And then she met the guy that would go on to be her husband, and the new guy raised her son as if it was his own, and that was amazing. And everything started to get a little bit better. But they didn't have any money because Jennifer was staying home raising her son, and her husband was a construction worker, but he wasn't good with money, and he could never put it together month after month, and constantly they stressed about money all the time. One of the good things about having a kid when you're that young is by the time the kid's grown up a little bit and going off to school, Jennifer was still in her 20s. And so she thought, all right, I'm tired of worrying about money. He's going off to school. I'm going to get a job at the company. She goes and gets hired at the company, some department, nothing great, and proves her worth over and over again. Just sounds like she was the fixer. Any problem, everybody's pulling their hair out, stressed, and she would calmly say, okay, we need to do this, 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 and this, and we'll be all right, and they would be all right. And then whoever was her manager would quickly promote her because we need you. It goes better when you're here. And she quickly, in less than 5 years, was at the top of the company. And Alan knew he had to take care of the people, his little core group that actually ran it, and he paid them really well. So all of a sudden, Jennifer, they lived in not so great a part of town. And her husband and her son really liked outdoor sports, fishing, skiing, the whole thing. And so all of a sudden, they move from the bad part of town to a nice part of town. They buy a nice chunk of land and they build their dream house on the land. The son and the father, instead of fishing with crappy poles at a dirty, gross pond that no one would want to go, all of a sudden now they're in a boat a state over on a really nice lake that they wouldn't have been able to go. Or they're skiing, they're flying to go to really nice ski resorts, and they got the nicest gear. So their lives changed a lot really quickly because Jennifer got her son into school and then shot up the company like an absolute rocket. And they build their dream house. They buy this big chunk of land, and they built the house back, tucked away. The main road is way out here, and the house is backed way up, way back on the back of the property. And they built a really long driveway that comes from the main road, and then there's a roundabout so you can just come in, and if you want to just keep going, you can go around and out the same way you came in. And in the middle of the roundabout, there's trees and shrubs and flowers and everything. But something they worried about as they completed their dream house, I really love to build a house someday or own a house. So like a story like that, I love. Man, they got to build their dream house. But as they completed their dream house, one thing they were a little bit worried about is the driveway was really long and huge. And they thought, when it snows, it's going to be a total disaster. Maybe we could call the city, and whoever plows the main road, maybe, and they built the driveway wide enough so it could maybe be plowed, maybe that person would come in and do our driveway too. So Jennifer, just thinking it's worth a shot, called the city. This is where it all starts coming together, people. Called the city and said, hi, we just built a house at this address. Would you mind giving me the number of who does the snow plowing in this area? Because we want to see if they could add our driveway quickly to the route. And this person at the city goes, yeah, no problem. And she gave Jennifer a number, and Jennifer calls the number, and a man named Kurt picks up. Hello? And she goes, hi, yeah, we just built this house, tells him about the driveway, and asks him, would you mind adding it to your route? It would really help us. And Kurt said, well, let me come out. We'll see if the plow and everything fits. I'll see if there's a place for the snow to go, and if there is, I would love to. And so Kurt, kind of funny, in the middle of summer, goes out and hooks his plow to his truck and goes over to Jen's house, and they stand on a hot blue sky day, and he slowly goes around the driveway in his truck while Jennifer stands out there and goes, yep, there's room, yep, keep coming, yep, you're good. And Kurt says, no problem, I'll add it. And Jen says, thank you so much. And they shake hands, and the deal is made. Well, now, fast forward 2 months, Jen is in her cluttered office down the hall from Alan, working away with the stresses of running a company. She has no idea Kurt, the guy she met in a funny circumstance and with a snowplow in the summer, 2 months ago, is sitting out in front of Alan's office. Alan, like a lot of people, Alan was completely in love with Jennifer, and it made the other people in the core team uncomfortable. They would always say, are you all right, Jennifer? He's acting weird. And Jennifer was used to people falling in love with her whole life and acting weird. And she handled it with grace and professionalism. But he would take advantage that he was the boss and she was the employee. And they think maybe in Alan's head, he knew that Jennifer had a husband and there was no chance. But maybe in Alan's head, he thought, well, if she didn't have a husband or in a different universe, we would be together. She likes me. She likes me a little bit more than the normal person, and we have this special relationship. And he would go in and tell her a story of something he did on the weekend, and she'd be going, oh, wow, Alan, great. And he just absolutely loved Jennifer. And at a certain point, I don't know if it was a week or a few days, but Jennifer and Kurt ran into each other. I don't know if it was in the parking lot or by the elevator or in the lobby. And Jennifer goes, oh my gosh, what are you doing here? And Kurt goes, what are you doing here? And Jennifer goes, I'm the, really important person. And Kurt goes, yeah, well, I am on the janitor staff. But yeah, I got a job here. Couple months after we met, and she goes, well, what a small world that is. But it's not that wild because it's a medium-sized town and a lot of people still worked at the company. But anyway, so good to see you. Thanks again. Yeah, no problem. They weren't friends. They didn't have any really type of relationship other than just they would say hi to each other. Well, 2 months into Kurt getting a job there, for the first time, just by pure coincidence, Jen and Alan and Kurt all ended up in the same place. I don't know if it's at the front doors or by the elevator, in the lobby. Again, I don't know. But they all of a sudden were together. And Jennifer, actually liking Kurt, gave him a warm hello. I don't know if it was a little hug or a touch on the back or a touch on the elbow or just her tone of voice, but something about the way that she said hello threw off Alan a little bit. And Alan felt like he needed to say something that showed Kurt, listen, pal, we're actually pretty close and have this special relationship. So just recognize how close that we are. And Alan said something, but like a lot of the things that Alan said, it came off as really awkward and not good. And to get through the awkward moment, Kurt said something like, whoa there, killer, hey now, oh, easy, buddy, something like that. Not trying to make him feel bad, but just he said something like, yeah, she's my girl. Didn't say that, but something like that. And then, oh, hey, killer. And Alan's face went blank. And Jennifer said she knew Alan good enough to know, that really miffed Alan. And she's going, all right, come on, Alan, let's go. We got a meeting. Or tried to make it seem like it was no big deal. But she said they went up, and Alan quickly just goes, I don't know, I got to go, I don't feel well or something. And he went out, and everybody was watching from the glass windows, and Alan went out to his car, and this is what he would do if he was challenged in any way. If someone said, I don't know if that's a good idea, we should try something else, he would just kind of get quiet, go out to his car, the big sign reserving his spot, and he'd get in his car and zoom off, and that's what he did. And a week after that, Kurt's manager brought Kurt into the office, told Kurt to close the door, and fired him. And Kurt had to go tell his wife, we're not getting the benefits. He only worked there like 2 months and a week, and so they didn't even kick in. And eventually, the word that Kurt got fired, I don't know how, made it back to Jen. And Jennifer, they think maybe for the first time since Alan had worked there, maybe the first time in Alan's life, Jennifer marched into Alan's office and laid down everything, that he should be ashamed. This is the type of nonsense drama his dad would have never allowed. The fact that Kurt got fired is beyond anything she could ever imagine, and this is the type of stuff, she said, that would she said, I have to quit. If you're not better, Alan, I'm gonna have to quit. This is the type of stuff. It doesn't matter the money. I will take my skills to a different company and do it there. I can't, if this is the type of stuff that is gonna happen in this company, I cannot be here. And Jennifer said Alan sat there and listened and took it in a way. And she said normally, and the reason she thought he took it and heard her is because normally he would have said, I didn't tell the manager to fire Kurt. If Kurt got fired, then that was his own thing. But he didn't try to do any of that. He sat there and he listened and he heard it. And even though Jen was furious, time goes on, and a week goes by, and then another week. And she said Alan came back to work the next day and was better and was less lazy. And it seemed, as bad as the situation was, and as much as it made her cringe knowing that she was a part of the operation that did something like that to someone, time moved on, and all of a sudden the whole awful situation was in the rear view mirror. So fast forward 2 more months from when Kurt got fired. Now the season has changed. Time has moved on. The weather forecaster is predicting the first big snowstorm of the year. The whole atmosphere is different. It's a Friday. People are trying to get some last minute work done. And then, all right, I'm out of here. We'll drive safe. Be careful with the weather. Thank you so much. And so here we are 2 months after. The whole situation's in the rearview mirror. And Jen is sitting at her computer, or I guess it'd be a typewriter back then, but is working away in her office, doing something, and gets done, and the plan is finish up a little work at the office, get some last minute supplies at the store, and then head home. Her son and husband were a state or two away doing some outdoor sports trip, and so she was like, I just want to get some supplies, get home, and be able to relax all weekend, sit with a nice cup of tea, and have the house to myself. And so she leaves work, goes to the store, gets some supplies, is driving home. The storm's looking bad. She gets home, parks her car, comes in the kitchen door, flips on the light, and Alan is sitting at her kitchen table, staring ahead, silent. And Jennifer's going, Alan, what are you doing here? Alan, is everything okay at work? Is there someone that we should call? Alan, what's going on? And she's saying that, but her mind is racing, and she's picturing the scene earlier that day where she told everybody in the meeting, yeah, my husband and son are gonna be gone all weekend. And Alan's back was to her. He was over to the side stirring some coffee, but he must have heard. Her mind is racing, and she's going, Alan, what's going on? And this is a man that she's seen every day at the office and who she hates. And all of a sudden, he's sitting in her house, and she's going, Alan, what are you doing? And then all of a sudden, Alan stands up, and the stool he was sitting on, his knees pushed the stool back, and it squeaked, awfully breaking the silence. And Alan stands up and sidesteps the kitchen table and charges at Jennifer. And Jennifer said she just went, no, 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 no. And Alan tackled her down onto the ground. He's straddling her, has all of his weight on her, choking her neck with one hand and raining down full power punches with the other hand, probably trying to put her out of consciousness or kill her, I guess. I don't know what he was planning to do. And so he's choking her and beating her with his other hand. And she said one of the first punches broke her nose really bad. And imagine getting punched over and over again on the broken nose. The bones are scraping together, and she's fighting him as hard as she could. She'll push his arm off, and then he'll do it again, but he's punching her. And she said one of the punches kind of knocked her out, and then her head hit the ground, or maybe the next punch woke her back up. And so all of a sudden, she is fighting for her life. And she said that she was trying to fight and picturing her kids and picturing not wanting to give up and picturing her wanting to see her family grow and build, but she was losing ground. There's only so many punches the head can take, and you can only go so long without a good breath. And so she was trying to fight as hard as she could, but she was slowing down. And she pictured her son, and she pictured her husband, and she pictured a scene from a road trip when she was a little girl, and she pictured her son again, and she felt horrible for giving up, or, she wanted to apologize to her family. I'm sorry, I tried as hard as I could. And as the darkness came in her mind's eye, she heard a sound, and it was the sound of an borderline obnoxiously loud engine bumping around, plowing the snow up on the main road. And Kurt's doing his normal route, boom, ba-da-dum, boom, boom, listening to music, has no idea what's happening in the house. And just like they had agreed 6 months before, on a summer day with a handshake, Kurt turned down the driveway. Now not only his headlights, but he has all of his fog lights and lighting rigs, and the whole beast is lit up. It's all facing straight down the driveway, lighting up the house through the big main window. There was just one little light on by the kitchen, but now all of a sudden, the truck is coming down the driveway. And so now Alan is probably thinking this is going horrifically wrong. It's unclear if he knew at that point if it was Kurt or not. And I'm sure he's thinking, not only is my plan to come over and murder, or who knows what he had planned to do with Jennifer once he got her unconscious or what. But not only is this plan going well, she's fighting, but now this truck is coming down the driveway. I was supposed to have the whole place to myself, and the truck is coming down, and he stops punching, and now he's just squeezing with both hands, trying to maybe just hide or shut her up, or who knows. But the whole thing is furious. And they're both now looking, and the truck's getting closer. Now it's coming around the roundabout, and Jennifer digs down deep to that place that all humans have, and she, with all of the strength that she has left, she has been beat to hell. With all the strength she has left, she bucks and squirms as the truck is coming around the roundabout, just enough to create space to let out a blood-curdling scream. She was screaming Kurt's name. It was so loud and blood-curdling, it would have made the hair on the devil's neck stand up. And now he's still straddling her, but they're both looking at the truck. She did the scream, but the truck kept going. And then the truck came to an abrupt stop. And the door flung open, and Kurt hopped out and started running towards the house. And when the truck stopped, the red brake lights lit up the whole living room and kitchen. And Alan sitting there, and his whole face and the whole room lights up with red light. And Alan is running towards the house, towards the front door. And Kurt said that he didn't know what he was about to see, but as he was running up, he thought by the sound of it, someone had fallen down the stairs and broke their neck or something like that. He didn't think in a million years he was going to see Alan. And in the time that Kurt is running towards the door, Alan, I don't know if it's out of his boot or off his waist, pulls a good-sized knife out, which it's notable he wasn't using the knife on Jennifer. He just wanted to use his bare hands. But now he's got a knife out. The front door opens, and Kurt once again fills almost the whole doorway, backlit, cloaked in fog and smoke. Perfect time for a power chord on an electric guitar. And Kurt's wet boot stepping in squeaked on the dry floor, and it took him less than a second to take in the whole scene. Jennifer's nose was pointing in the wrong direction, and she had blood down to her waist, and Alan is standing there with the knife. So as he steps in, pretty much instantly, Alan charges Kurt. He's got the knife. You think, I'm just plowing the snow, and all of a sudden you're one step into this house. A guy's charging with a knife. They make contact and spill the other way into the dining room. It's the front door, the family room's one way, the dining room's the other way, but the dining room is outside of Jennifer's sight. So she gets herself to her feet. Tough woman. I mean, she was concussed and had a broken nose and took a beating, and the fact that she was even on her feet says a lot. But she gets to her feet and she goes, okay, she's thinking, I gotta call 911, or should I go help? And the two men are fighting in the dining room. The whole house is shaking. It's beyond loud. And she's going, I gotta go help. Should I run in there? Should I call 911? And pretty much the whole situation was too much in that moment, and her head was badly damaged, and she just stood there shaking, trying to either call 911. And then all of a sudden, Jen saw something so out of the ordinary that it almost snapped her back to reality. And what she saw was Alan flying. I think the word she used in the interview was sailing. Alan sailing from the room outside of her vision back into the family room through the air. You don't see a grown man flying through the air that often. And he came to a sliding stop. Kurt follows him in, calmly rolling up his sleeves, and he had the professional grin on his face of somebody that's about to show you something they're really good at. The professional grin, I picture it the same grin maybe a locksmith would have right when they pop the big lock and save the day, or the grin a plumber might have when they realize they can fix the leak easily, saving the house's water damage. But he comes in calmly rolling up his sleeves, grinning, and Alan rolls towards the fireplace and grabs the fireplace hook poker tool. Those things are no joke. And so you got to think Alan at this point, he has panic in his eyes. This whole thing couldn't be going worse. And so he's thinking, if I am going to make it out of this thing or get back on track, I'm going to have to kill Kurt right now with this fireplace poker. He's a wounded animal. He's scared. He's panicked. He's a dangerous guy. He's got this no-joke fireplace poker, and he raises it up towards his head, takes a step, ready to bring it down with ill intent. And he started to bring it down. About right here, Kurt punched him. And the funny thing about it, and probably my favorite part of this story when I was a kid, is the punch was so jaw stretching and head snapping and happened so fast and was over and done with so quick. Alan never saw it somehow. He didn't know what happened to him. He went from thinking, I'm about ready to change the winds in this situation, eat this, Kurt, to all of a sudden his ears are ringing and his legs are jelly and he's just standing there now like half holding the fireplace poker, looking at Kurt and Jen, trying to figure out what happened. They said he actually, even though he was backed up against the fireplace, he actually looked behind him to see, did somebody hit me in the back with a baseball bat? What happened to me? Well, he had less than a second to wonder about the whole thing before the next car accident of a punch to the side of the head from Kurt. And that punch made Alan crumpled down to one knee. His hand involuntarily dropped the fireplace poker. It clanged on the ground, made a really loud noise. He's looking at the fireplace poker that he just dropped. Wow, that made a loud noise. He's looking at his hand. His body is doing weird things as his brain is being bruised and bounced around his skull. And he's looking at his hand, and now he's on one knee by the fireplace. And Jennifer said he looked up at Alan with a face that said, I can't take anymore. I'm done. Call the police. Do what you got to do. It's over. I'm done. And that face was wiped off by another sickening punch from Kurt, which after that punch, he completely slumped over to the side and Alan's head on the way down bounced on the floor and made a weird noise. And Alan's now on the floor in some stage of consciousness. And as Kurt brought his fist up again, Jen said that was the moment she had to look away. And when she looked away, the whole thing is happening over here. When she looked away, the opposite wall, she saw Kurt's truly humongous shadow and his arm coming up and down over and over. And when police and paramedics got there, Alan was laying on his back, unconscious, next to the fireplace. And they said his jaw was broken and dislocated so severely that it hung way down and to the side and had to be held up and braced up. And they had to put him in a medically induced coma for brain swelling. And he went blind in one eye and he broke a number of vertebrae in his back or in his neck, and Kurt's injuries were just a sore fist and sore elbow. But because of the extensive injuries, they also said he had some brain damage, not a lot, maybe 95% not brain damage, but he had some comprehension issues and some issues with the vertebrae, and because of all of it, he got charged and ended up serving in more of a hospital / jail because he needed constant care, basically, because of the injuries. And they said, he didn't live all that long, but they said that Alan lived the rest of his life watching TV in a mint green day room through one eye, with a grumpy look on his face. And that's the story. Happy Halloween, everybody. See you next time.